Okay, I will now hand over to you, Dennett, to
Okay.
take it away.
All right. Well, everybody, thank you very much. And belated May Day greetings to everyone. The question of art and culture as a shield against oppression is one that we at CLS discuss from time to time. As Luke has said, there have been many artists who have helped us in our work over the 40 years that CLS has been in existence. Now, following on from the Mangrove 9 film, which we saw, it reminded me of several incidents in which the police, acting on behalf of the state, attempted to crush the artistic aspirations of the newly arrived Caribbean people in this country. And amongst those events were the Metro 4 and the what's referred to as the Cricklewood 12, or the Carib 12, or the Burton 12. These were major cases where resistance to this oppression took place. And today we were going to have one of the creators of music in our community. We were going to have Dennis Bovell. Unfortunately, there's been a bit of a mix-up, and instead what I've done is I've had an interview with Dennis, which I'll play to you. We also are very fortunate to have one of the founders of Rock Against Racism, a really important movement in the 70s, which brought together forces against fascism and helped to defeat, in a certain extent, fascism in this country. And we're fortunate to have Roger Huddle here with us today. So the first thing I'll do, if I can do it properly, is to show you the video that I had with Dennis Bovell. And throughout this time, you can put up questions to Dennis and, to Roger and to myself. But also we've got someone here, a member of CLS, Frank Murray, who was there when the police raided the Carib Club in Cricklewood. And I've asked him to be ready to answer some questions about how he felt as well. So let me see if I can do this properly. Hold on one second. No, I'm not able to do it properly. I'm sure I will. All right. So what happened when there was a sound clash in the Carib Club, Cricklewood, on October the 11th, 1974?
I think you need to share the sound.
Sound clash.
Beg your pardon?
It was a three.
I think you need to do the share sound from the computer.
There were three sound systems vying for the number.
1 second, everybody.
I can hear it. It's fine.
People can hear it?
Yeah, I can.
Okay.
Yeah, it's fine.
On the spot. Of
Sorry. Can anyone who can hear me not hear the video?
No, it's coming through loud and clear.
Okay.
vying for
Hold on.
the audience react.
74.
Well, in this sound clash, it was a three-way spin out, which means that there were three sound systems vying for the number one spot, vying for the audience reaction to proclaim them the top sound of the evening. One sound was a sound called Count Nix. Another sound was a sound called Lord Coos. And then the third sound was Sufferer. Now, I was the controller of Sufferer. I put the records on, you know, and I was the selector. And that night, all of a sudden, at the point where I'm playing a record that was given to me by Lee Scratch Perry. Lee Scratch Perry was standing right next to me, okay? Now this clash had a funny spin out because Lord Coos was also a friend of Bunny Lee, the famous Jamaican record producer. And Bunny Lee and Lee Perry were known opponents of each other, you know, kind of in the music world. They had spin-off, the biggest of sound classes. So Lord Coos had armed himself with all of the Bunny Lee cuts, because Bunny Lee was just around in London at that time for the promotion of Johnny Clark. Johnny Clark had a song called Move Out of Babylon, and Bunny Lee had produced that. And Johnny Clark was about to embark on his first British tour, live tour, and his backing band was none other than my band, Matumbi. So I had an in to Bunny Lee. And of course, he knew that I had the sound system connections, and he had given me, you know, some of his dub plates. Lord Coos had all of those, but what he didn't have was the dub plates that Lee Perry had brought to London that day. Now, an old friend, Larry Lawrence, went to Heathrow Airport, picked up Lee Perry, and brought him to Sufferer's Camp, because we didn't want him to sell his dub plates to Lord Coos before we had to go up playing them on Lord Coos. And we knew, of course, that he would, in the course of time, sell his dub plates to, you know, whoever had money. Because, I mean, those guys were making records to sell, and the dub plates were just advertising what's to come, you know, kind of like pre-release, you know. So Bunny Lee had his dub plates, and I had Bunny Lee's dub plates, and then Lee Perry came, and then Lee Perry had brought me a special dub plate, a tune with Vin Gordon playing trombone. Now that tune is now known as The Real Rock, but this version started off like a rag tune, you know, before it went into boom, heavy dub. And at the point where the music changed from the rag, you know, rag dance ball to dub reggae, the audience were ecstatic. The audience reached peak, like, yeah! And at that time, I knew I had won the clash. But at the same time, there was some police in the audience taking out a prisoner. That coincided with whoever his friends were deciding to free him from that. And that happened. Then the police ran outside, I thought. And I found out later that what had happened was that they had run into the ladies' toilet and were radioing for assistance. Now, I had no idea of this until the trial, because what happened was the next morning after all that happened, my friends were saying to me, hey, you know what? The police are looking for you. And I was like, why? So I went to Golders Green Police Station to see what it was they wanted. And they said to me, yeah, we were told that you on the microphone said something, and then the whole crowd turned on the police. I was like, yeah, what did I say? You know, we don't know, but, you know, everybody's saying that you incited the crowd against the police, which was totally untrue.
Now, I'm asking you this question, I mean, you've explained, but did you go to the police?
Yes, I went to the police station.
No, I said, did you goad?
Did I goad? Oh,
Yes.
not at all. That would have been a stupid thing to do. In fact, they came and gave evidence and said that I stood on the stage like some revolutionary with a microphone in my hand saying, get the boys in blue. I thought, now how weird is that? I would be talking to a lot of black people, get the boys in blue. That is a Cockney term. And that was put there by them.
You were tried along with others who were arrested at the club. at the Central Criminal Court, the Old Bailey.
Yes.
What were you charged with?
I was charged with causing an affray. It wasn't alleged that I hit anybody or that they said that I stirred up the thing. I caused this affray. Up until then, I didn't know what the word affray meant. They accused me of that, stirring it up, which was completely untrue. And I was flabbergasted to find police officers perjuring themselves and trying to secure a conviction. The trials, there were 2 trials. The first trial lasted 6 months. Can you imagine going to the Old Bailey every day from 10 till 4? There was little chance of working. So 6 months of
Hold
that.
on, hold on.
At the end of that trial, 9 people were acquitted, to show you how farcical it was. 9 people were acquitted, and 3 people had what we call a hung jury. And I happened to be one of them 3. And so instead of, as I protested, a man is supposed to be innocent until he's found guilty. I hadn't been found guilty, so therefore my innocence should have been presumed. But they moved the goalposts and said they were going to retry the 3 people who had had a hung jury. I never heard of that before in the history of the court, but they said they could do it. And then a second trial ensued, and that trial was trial of 3 people. At the end of that trial, one of us was acquitted, and ironically, the guy who was acquitted was the guy who posted my bail when I was first charged with this causing an affray, so that I would lose my surety. They went to his house, kicked the door down, arrested him, and charged him with hitting a policeman in the face with a bottle, which was completely untrue. But because he was the only witness to say, to give evidence on my behalf, I think what they decided, right, let's make him as well, so that it would throw the weight off of this man's evidence. Because this was the guy who, once the pushing and shoving had started, who was desperately trying to get our sound system back up and running, right? But at that time, there were other sound systems in the room and on their microphones. When asked by the judge about that, I said, well, for all I know, it could have been a talking record. And the judge looked at me and said, do you expect me to believe that people talk on record? Well, he obviously never heard of you, Roy, or I, Roy, or Big Youth, or Prince Jasbo, or any of them lot, like, who actually talk on record. Prince Buster talks on record. And I tried to say that to him, and he thought, you're lying. Nobody talks on record. I mean, what about Jay-Z?
Well, how long did the second trial last?
The second trial lasted for 3 months. So in total, I was on trial for 9 months over this. At the end of the second trial...
12, wouldn't that be 12 months? 9 months
No,
and
6 and
months.
3.
Oh, 6. Oh, beg your pardon, yes. Yeah.
6 and 3, 9 months. At the end of the second trial, the jury went to deliberate. And by 9 o'clock at night, they hadn't come back with a verdict. And the judge called us in and said, look, if they're not back by 10 o'clock, I'm throwing this whole thing out, and that's going to be the end of it. At 5 to 10, they come back and say, 9 of us think Dennis Bovell was guilty. And that was the majority in the judgment. No, I'm taking that. There's more than 6, more than half, right? So 3 people had still believed in my innocence up until then. And so that gave me grounds for appeal. I appealed and was set free by the Central Criminal Court and had my sentence squashed and my conviction squashed.
Mhm. Okay. What was the effect of your trial on
Well, it certainly
Caribbean?
made me distrust the police. Up until then, I was one of these people that would say to someone who'd said that they'd been fitted up by the police, and they'd come to tell them if you really do it, you know. And quite a lot of people in that time are going, no, they fitted me up, they fitted me up. It wasn't until it happened to me that I was, you know, aware how easily it could be done. I mean, they put me in a lineup, right, an ID parade, looking for a man with a beard, and I was the only one in the parade with a beard. None of the police officers picked me out, except the two last. It was as though all the innocent ones who thought they could have recognized someone were sent, and they didn't recognize anyone. Then the two who were going to nail me to say, yeah, we saw him, all the lights were on, and he was on the stage. I was nowhere on the stage. I never went on the stage at all, right? He was on the stage with a microphone in his hand saying, get the boys in blue.
But the effect, I mean, for me, your trial was so important because as a schoolboy, it gave me a degree of confidence to know that the system could be beaten. What was your observation of the...
But the system is a fraud. The system is flawed. The system is full of prejudice. You know, in fact, I was invited to give a name of anyone, for instance, so that the police could follow the lead of that person. And it didn't, it could be someone I didn't much care for. And I said, you're asking me to grasp on an innocent person, you know, to say it was so-and-so or whoever it was. But I couldn't do that. I mean, it was like, where do I go after I say it was someone and go to the witness stand and point them out as well? You know, it was unheard of. But the thing was, if there was anyone making any noise on the microphone in that dance that night, it wasn't me.
Okay. Do you think things have changed in respect of Black art and culture in the United Kingdom? Do you think that...
Black art and culture has changed slightly because what they do is they give you an opportunity, they set you up to fail. They give you an opportunity, and when you fail, they go, see, I told you it wasn't going to work. And that's been the case of many youth-structured places up and down the whole UK who have been underfunded, so they fail, you know, who have been undermined, so they fail, or who have been under-assisted, so they fail.
But we now see a lot of Black faces on TV. We've got Michaela Cole, both writing and acting. We've got numerous actors on TV adverts. We've got Black music playing a key role in British pop culture. Don't you think we've advanced in terms of our art and culture?
Yes, we've advanced, but not nearly far enough. Because even though some of us are advancing, they're still holding back the majority of us because they don't want to see us unite, in the words of Bob Marley.
Mm-hmm. Well, you used a word which I found telling when you say this. You said that you felt that the police in that period of 1974 were engaged in an action which would result in cultural fatigue. What do you mean by that?
Well, they were trying to culturally fatigue us, to say, look, you're not Black, you know, you're colored, okay? And if you, persist in having Black organizations we're gonna disband them until they had this Commission for Racial Equality, and it was anything but. They tried to dissuade people from recognizing their Africanity or from congregating in their Africanity unless they were worshiping their Bible, you know, the King James Version. If you were going to church and starting a new church, look at how many churches there are nowadays, right? They applaud that, yeah, because we're praying to the God that is going to save us, who ain't come yet, but in all the Bibles, that God is a white God, right? And so we're praying to that God, and our parents are telling us, yeah, you got to love this character who is kind of an impossibility when you think about how he came and all the things he did and how he's revered and how, you know, he's coming back. So you better be good. And slavery wasn't a crime. So don't you take any revenge on that, because vengeance is mine, saith the Lord.
Yes, but are you saying that that was the cause of the police action at the Carib Club in Cricklewood?
I think
Not
the cause of the police action was to teach those people a lesson who dared to free a prisoner from the police. And it should be noted that in all this commotion, the original suspect was never brought to court or found. It beggars belief whether he existed at all.
Well, that is a bit strange, because the narrative is that he ran from his car and ran into the club. Well, you would have
Which
thought
is a bit impossible, because he would have had to have jumped the queue. He would have not only had annoyed club goers, but he certainly wouldn't have been able to boozle his way past the doorman.
Okay.
I'm sure if anyone was running in a suspicious mood, in a suspicious manner, into that club, the doorman would have prevented him from entering, especially if there were police hot on his heels.
Okay. Well, that's a point. Now, in closing, could the art, sound system, reggae, other manifestations of Caribbean art and music be used both as a defense against oppression and as a weapon to fight oppression? If so, how?
Well, as a defense against oppression, the songs that are regularly pumped out on these sound systems, right, are singing of peace and love and harmony. You know, they're not saying, let's go and kill anybody. They're saying, let's unite and come together as one and love each other. I mean, you know, but I'm sure, as I said before, that's not what they want. They want to divide us in order to rule us. Okay. Well, Dennis, I know you're very, very busy. I'm very grateful on behalf of Caribbean Labour Solidarity for this interview. And hopefully one day you'll be able to attend our meetings and answer what I know will be hundreds of questions. And thank you for taking the time from your very, very busy schedule. And once again, thanks. My pleasure. Okay, folks, we heard a brief bit of the interview with Dennis, and it's given us pause for thought, because as he was saying this, I realized that a couple of years ago in Croydon, the police put themselves out as cultural commissars and have urged the council not to give any licenses to any events. Beg your pardon. Sorry. Thank you very, very much. And not to give licenses
to any event which they perceive will play bashment music. Now, I thought this only happened in totalitarian states where the authorities can tell you what to have as your culture, but it looks like it's happening here now. However, on the positive side, just before our event was planned, it came to light that there is a two-tone exhibition in Coventry. I think it's at the Herbert Museum, which celebrates the blossoming of Black music in this country and its influence on white music. And so that is really a fantastic thing to have. And I hope Roger is ready to explain and to give the background to how he, as one of the co-organizers of Rock Against Racism, used culture and used this burgeoning, this merging of Black and white music to fight racism and fascism. So Roger, I think you're muted. If you could unmute yourself. Right. Are you ready?
Yeah, fine.
Okay.
Okay, well, thanks very much for inviting me. I'm not sure where we can begin because it's very difficult. There's a personal history from my days in the 60s as a mod, as a lover of blue beat, as going to house parties and learning to love the music, but also seeing the political music of the counter culture of the rock bands of Grateful Dead, a Fairport Convention, other kind of bands. So I came through the 60s linked to politically to the anti-Vietnam War movement and committed to all the kind of different various elements of what I call black music, including Coltrane and jazz, etc. So when we come to the mid-70s, I'm with other people, we lived in a situation where the National Front, a fascist organisation, are growing really, really fast. I mean, they're moving between 1973 and 1976. They moved into sort of capturing nearly half of the votes in South London, 42%. So in Walthamstow, where I live, they was picking up around about 16 to 20%. So the National Front were a real threat. Now, the National Front weren't just racist. The National Front were Nazis, which meant that organisationally they wanted a regime similar to Hitler's regime in Germany, which meant that any ethnic minorities, any black or Asian people, Jews, trade unionists, etc., were under threat. At the same time, with the stop and search, there was enormous offensive against Afro-Caribbean people by the police, especially in areas like Handsworth and South London, etc. But also because of the expulsion of the Maori Asians in early '76 and the resurgence of Enoch Powell talking about immigration being out of control, we've got to send them back, and all the rest of the stuff that Powell stands for. This was in May 76. By the time you get to the carnival, there's the first massive attack on the carnival by the police, or the men in blue, the boys in blue, as Dennis just called them. Never heard anybody call a policeman a boy in blue, except for the police themselves. But anyway, that's neither near nor there. But in the middle of 1976, Eric Clapton, who was a blues guitarist, a white blues guitarist, was on tour. He made #1 hit with Bob Marley's revolutionary "I Shot the Sheriff." And he was on tour and he was in Birmingham, and he came out on stage and he started going on about how Enoch Powell was right. We've got to send them back. We've got to start, the wogs have got to be gone, and etc. He started ranting and raving racially. And he's a man who made all his money basically ripping off B.B. King and Chicago blues. So here's a man coming out with all this racist garbage. And we was really furious, me and a few friends, Ed Saunders and a few others. So we wrote a letter to the press. And we just said, come off it. Your rock music, your black music's biggest colonialist. You made all your money from taking playing black music. What are you going on about with all this Enoch Powers right stuff? And so we sent this letter off, and we put a PS on it. We said, "Who shot the sheriff, Eric? It sure as hell weren't you." And we said, if you want to join in a campaign against racism in music, then write to this PO box number, and we'll form an organisation called Rock Against Racism. Well, within a week, we had nearly 500 to 600 letters, mainly from reggae fans and mixed couples and soul fans from Wigan Casino, and mainly soul fans who were really, really sick to death of the racism and wanted to do something. So that's how the organisation got started. It was after that we started. We did our first gig with Carol Grimes' Boogie Band, which was a kind of a pub rock band. And our second gig we did in Christmas at the Royal College of Art, 1976, was with Matumbi. It was with Matumbi and a soul funk band called Limousine, Carol Grimes, and what we did at that gig, we said, can everybody come on stage at the end and play? So we can show on the stage at the end of the gig, black and white unity on the stage, black and white unity in the music. And we adopted a slogan, reggae, soul, rock and roll, jazz, funk, punk, our music. And it was very important because the National Front, to them, all that music was jungle music. All that music was foreign to Britain. That was their position on the music that I loved and the music that a lot of us really enjoyed. So to say it's not, it's our music and we're going to fight for it was the key thing that kicked off Rock Against Racism. And from there onwards, it developed over the next few years. In fact, 43 years ago on Friday was the carnival in Victoria Park, where we had the Clash and Tom Robinson, but more importantly, the great Steel Pulse. And the Steel Pulse were important at that time because they had a hit, a minor hit, but they had a hit with a song called Ku Klux Klan. And they came out on the stage at the carnival all dressed as Klansmen. And by that time at the carnival, we had 80,000 people there. Now, the reason why it's important that we count the numbers is because when I was sort of managing the stage and I introduced a punk band called X-Ray Specs with the wonderful Polly Styrene, who was a mixed race singer. She did a great song called Oh Bondage Up Yours, which is still an anthem of a fight against oppression, both racial and gender. And I introduced her first at 12 o'clock, and there was no one in Victoria Park. Well, there was a man walking his dog, and there were two kids on a push bike. By the time she finished her first song, a demonstration had arrived that had walked all the way from Trafalgar Square. And suddenly the whole park was full, 80,000 people on that march. And so that was the greatest coming together of the music and the audience. And really, from that point on was 4 or 5 months later, we did a carnival in Manchester, and then we did another carnival in London at Brockwell Park with Aswad, another great young black reggae band. And by 1979, really, the National Front were beaten. And we did it, not just Rock Against Racism, we did it with the Anti-Nazi League as well. And during those 3-4 tumultuous years, alongside the visual arts, alongside street theatre, alongside the continuing black and white unity on the stage and at the gigs and everything, we managed to really drive the NF back. We didn't defeat racism, but defeating the fascists at that time was an important victory against racism. And also, I think during that time, I've got my two-tone T-shirt on. Jerry Danvers was a solid part of Rock Against Racism. Him and his band, the Specials, were rehearsing up in Coventry at the Socialist Workers' Party bookshop there. They had to pull out from that shop because it was burnt down by the NF. The same as the place which we started off our PO box number was also burnt down by the NF. So it was a aggressive and a violent battle that we had over those years. But we did defeat the NF. And what came out of it, I think going back to what the whole argument about making space for black artists, etc. I think we helped a little bit to create a little bit of an open space. But what we did do was create that kind of idea of mixed bands, and the music that came out of that period, out of reggae, punk, and a sort of what came after it, and especially jazz. What came out of that, I think, was a new form of music and clubbing and playing, and I think it was quite an important development. The space for that music is still as small as ever with the dominant culture, but nevertheless, I think we played a small role in creating a space for art and for the artists.
Okay, Roger, thank you very much. I don't think the role was small. I think the role was significant, very, very significant. You moved a huge amount of people. I'm going to ask if there's any comments or questions from the audience. I think Dr. Liz, you had wanted to ask a question or make a comment. Could you please unmute yourself?
Sister Liz today, Dennis, and our lovely esteemed guests, and Dennis in his absence. Thank you so much for that reminder, for taking me back there, Roger. I have to, hello Jim. I have to give a confession that I used to be a punk rocker. So going over all that was so lovely, you know. I went to a Catholic girls' school. My secret time is I hang out with my punk rock. Can you see that? Show the T-shirt. I couldn't see it. Your two-tone, yeah, lovely. Yeah, I just listened to Madness on Radio 4, but so lovely to hear, because it was sort of like I loved all the reggae, and I grew up with all the reggae and all the lovers rock and all that sort of thing. But being a teenager at that time, I have to tell you that it did have a massive impact on my political, yeah, I'm still out there kind of thing. My question was to Dennis, was about the Black community and the labelling of being involved in activism and getting, you know, because the police would come and knock you up for no reason. So why go out of there and get involved? But it made me, you know, it made me feel protected, you know, to go on a demo, to get up and say no. I'm still down here in South London, and I moved down here after Cherry Gross, may she rest in peace, was murdered in her home. And coming down here and joining these demos and seeing Black people out on the streets and Black people making a noise that wasn't just carnival and walking up kind of thing. You know, it was political, it was changing things, and it was actually, you know, actually made an impact on education, actually made an impact on other culture, like dance and digital arts and spoken word. And, you know, finally also made an impact on history, because our history was completely hidden from school. You know, I remember being in a school in Wembley in Brent, and they would say, you know, they were starting to realise that we were multicultural. So they put a map of the world on the floor and said to go and stand where you were born. And I happened to be born in Wales because my mum and dad were NHS sort of pioneers and moved to Wales when they got a job there. And I was sort of like told to stand in the corner because I was lying, you know. So it made young Black people feel that we had a political voice, and that, you know, we have to stand up if we're going to make a difference. I mean, Dennis's family, when I worked at King's for 30 odd years, and just luckily before the pandemic, I had to resign and retire actually because of the massive impact it had on my mental health. And yeah, anyway, but when you're when you, I'll have to stop talking now. But so the Anti-Fascist League as well also, 30 odd years ago we were going to churches where people were being deported, and it was the same people I went with, the women from King's Cross Women's Centre, and people I'd met from university, and people from the miners' strikes, and all those people that 30 years ago, 30 years on, we're back to fighting against deportations and the hostile environment. It feels like we haven't done anything, but the fact that we've kept fighting all these 30 years, that is an advance, I think, because we've not given in. We've not given up and given in. Another song. And we've made sure that art has been not just visual. 2 years ago, I was the women's officer in my CLP, and we had an International Women's Day event where we talked about banners. And we literally talked about banners, but it then became women's voices in struggle, how art has helped all of us, written, visual, that all of that art has helped us to become activists. And the artist that made our banners for Notting Hill Carnival, I met through the Labour Party, may she rest in peace as well now. She was making banners for Unite demo and for Labour Party demos. So thank you for bringing that history back, Roger. Thank you, Denot. You're always, you're a good mentor now, and I'm glad that I've met you finally. So keeping me busy. So thank you, everybody, and solidarity.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sister Liz. But Sister Liz or Dr. Liz from a punk rocker. Wow. That's a journey. Anyhow, I've got Bentley. You better not start singing, otherwise the show will mash up. I think I've got now Bentley followed by Nadine. Bentley, do you want to unmute yourself and give your contribution?
Thanks very much. I have a colleague, a comrade who is here, and he's the one that wants to talk.
Okay.
Talk from him.
Right.
His name is Marcel Scully.
Okay.
In terms of solidarity with the people, with the working people of the Caribbean, in terms of solidarity with the working people of the Caribbean, when was the last time you focused on the arts of the working people of the Caribbean? When was the last time you focused on the arts of the working people of the Caribbean?
I can't tell you precisely when, but we have, over the 40 years of our existence, we have spent a huge amount of time and effort in relation to art from the Caribbean and from elsewhere. I would have to go back into my records. What I'd urge you to do is look on our website and dig it up, and you'll see what we've done. I think on our website there's a list of the activities that we have done for the people of the Caribbean. We are Caribbean Labour Solidarity. This
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Your the Caribbean People's Labour Solidarity. Exactly.
Yes, but the point is, we are not based in the Caribbean. We're based here in Britain. So we support the Caribbean.
You're solidarity with them.
Yes,
right? You're in solidarity with them. We're here, but you're in solidarity with them.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you very much. Okay, my next person is Nadine. Nadine, if you lower your hand and give your contribution, please.
Okay, thanks very much. I just wanted to come back to what Dennis was saying about rock against racism. I was actually in Trafalgar Square. There was a group of us from Islington who'd been fighting against racism and fascism. The impact when we got to Trafalgar Square was amazing because the square was completely packed, which we weren't expecting. We were expecting quite a small demonstration. The police were completely unready for it. they had very few people there. In fact, when the march moved off from Trafalgar Square, it filled the whole of the Strand and Fleet Street. And it continued to fill the whole of the roads as it walked towards the very long walk towards Victoria Park. And it was very, very interesting. And so I know the people waiting in the park weren't expecting such a big march, but certainly as we picked up people along the way, it was really quite inspiring. And I think Rock Against Racism did play a rather pivotal role in actually engaging with the racist white youth, which were prevalent in London at the time and elsewhere. I worked as a youth worker, and certainly I would say Rock Against Racism was a really good tool for youth workers to engage with and to engage with the youth. And it did change quite a few of the youth I worked with minds, because it opened them up to working with black and white youth, black and white musicians. And I think it was a really positive thing, and which could perhaps be replicated against now.
Okay, thank you. Wilf, I've got you as the next person. So Wilf, if you lower your hand and unmute yourself.
Yeah, Will.
Hey, Roger, man. Good to see you. And just to say, I remember, because I was given the job of looking after the music press in Victoria Park. I remember having this gaggle of photographers from the music press saying, "What's happening? Is this thing going to be cancelled?" When it started, because there's absolutely nobody there. But I mean, you know, I mean, I think one of the comments that I want to make, and it echoes some of the stuff that Nadine was saying, was the incredible level of violence in the streets at that particular point in time. I mean, people talk about no-go areas for white people now. They forget that, you know, quite a lot of London was no-go area for black people, especially East London and some parts of South London. And I think one of the things that Rock Against Racism, you know, in its local form did was, you know, create a solidarity which allowed actually some of those areas to open up and to challenge that kind of violence and exclusion in the pubs. I remember I used to be involved in running Islington Rock Against Racism. We put in on getting asked by the landlord at a pub down at the Angel, the Blue Coat Boy, to put a gig on in there to get the fascists out of there, because actually he recognised that actually it was excluding a lot of his customers, a lot of potential customers. So yeah, I mean, I remember that gig because we had to get a band from Leeds because nobody in London would play in there. Right, and all it was a big fight in the end. But that, you know, that was the times though. But one of the things I do think that you know, you talked about, you know, opening up a space. I think Rock Against Racism did create a space, you know, a definite cultural space for black and white young people to be in the same space together. Because before that, you know, you either went to the sound systems and the white kids were going to their rock gigs or whatever. And except for working class white kids that like black music to a sound system, or you know, you had the soul stuff in, especially in terms of Northern soul. There was no space where people were coexisted together really. And I think it played an important role in sort of opening up that space, really. That's what I wanted to say.
Okay, thank you. I've got next Dr. Jim Zakordarin. Dr. Jim, could you unmute yourself, please?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
And afterwards, we've got Frank.
I'd like to say thank you to our speaker. He brought back lots and lots of memories. I was born in Guyana and I came to London at age 17 in 1961. I met and fell in love with a white woman who was, I was a bus conductor. I lied about my age, being 22, but I was only 17, and became a London bus conductor. So we fell in love, and it was quite a difficult time for a black man and a white woman. And I got the full wrath of not only white people, but the racist black people opposed to this kind of mixed relationship. So I entered straight away the struggle against racism. I'm pleased that I'm now 77. My son
married an African woman, and I've got several African grandchildren, and my daughter married an Irishman. So we are a really rainbow family, and I've published several books looking at equality and diversity and fighting for racial justice. Sadly, I became active in a trade union movement that was totally racist at that time, the 60s, 70s, 80s. Often they refused our membership to join. When we joined, we had some short-sword wearing National Front badges. And so we had a big battle. And it's sad that the trade union movement and the TUC resisted Black organization, but Rock Against Racism and Anti-Nazi League was the only organization that pulled Black and white people together. But the official trade union movement, at the time, for example, there were, like the Labour Party and the TUC, opposed to Black people organizing politically in the trade union, in the Labour Party. They thought it was apartheid, Black people organizing. And so we had to rely on white people to represent Black interests, which they didn't, but they used us as voting fodder. So many of us took the initiative from getting involved in the Anti-Nazi League, which was mainly left radicals, but mainly Socialist Workers' Party and what they call the extreme left got together and showed solidarity and organized those events. At that time, I went to church. Nobody was sitting next to me. At the Labour Party, when I tried to move motions about supporting Black workers, condemned me for being racist by saying Black workers need to be self-organized, but white workers need to support and give us solidarity. It was an experience. And so I remember in 1981, when I stood for Parliament, having been a councillor for a long time, my own Labour Party opposed me because I thought about Black self-organization, and we lobbied the Labour Party to get Black sections as part of its affiliation. So it was a battle, and I want to pay tribute to those comrades who often risk their liberty and their lives, like Blair Peach did, and died at an anti-Nazi rally in Southall. But those comrades were tremendous. The mainstream didn't come out. It was mainly Caribbean youth who kept and sustained the anti-racist movement. And many of them were imprisoned. They were harassed by the police. They were condemned. They were criminalized. But some good come out of it, but not for that class of people. It was a Black middle class who the government opened up a little bit through tokenism and through window dressing by appointing people into committees and positions of responsibility and so on. And it wasn't until 1991 that the TUC held a conference about supporting Black self-organization. And not until 1993 that the TUC then organized the first Black Workers' Conference. They were opposed to us as Black people. We organized our own conferences since the 1980s. And when the Labour Party see and were exposed for their racism, then an opening up but took it over. So I can only pay tribute to those comrades. And I was amazed, those comrades on the left and the Anti-Nazi League. The church tell us, the Black churches and the white churches said, keep out of that. That's a recipe for confrontation. The police used to go around schools and telling Black youngsters, don't get involved, you'll be criminalized, you never find employment and all sorts of things. But despite all that, we owe a lot to those youngsters who really helped to galvanize Black and white support, and to not only on the streets we unite and fight, but in the trade union movement and the Labour Party. Sadly, all these organizations still have systemic and structural racism that exists across the entire structure. I was lucky to be one of the few Black full-time trade union regional officer with my countryman Bernie Grant, Bill Morris, and we were the Black trade unionists, full-time trade union activists. And we set up an organization like Black Trade Union Solidarity Movement, all stems from our contact with the left. So that organized churches, the organized political parties didn't care, they didn't support us. In my own town in Luton, we organized a coach to that event, and Rock Against Racism. And I was so inspired when we walked through East London, people hanging out their windows, coming out in the streets, cheering us. So there was lots of ground support. But you know, we cannot fight racism by tokenism, by saying the nice things, but not putting our body on the streets, not associating with the with the unions and the labor movement, and fighting back. As an activist for over 60 years, I spent half my working life and time fighting racism within institutions that's supposed to help us, like the trade unions and the Labour Party. I've been a Labour councillor on and off for 39 years. I've stood for Parliament on many occasions, and I've been involved. I even stood for General Secretary of the GMB Union. I was an officer, and I felt forced out of the GMB after 11 years. So the struggle goes on. My only concern, and I'll finish with this, we need more young people. We need more people. I mean, I'm 77, quite ill, but I'm still in there fighting. But we need more young people, and we need people of good intentions, like Martin Luther King has said. There's no point remaining silent, remaining neutral at a time of a crisis, because you only get worse. And that's why we fought racism for centuries in this country. For centuries we fought racism. Black people were here when the Romans invaded, and they resisted the Roman invasion of England in 43 AD. And what has happened systematically over the years, things have got worse, because the people who are supposed to be our friends have let us down. I remember the Asian people saying to the Asian people, calling meetings in the mosque, and stay away from the street. Don't confront the racists. Stay away from the street, go to the mosque, go to the churches. Don't follow Jim Tacordin. I was a councillor then, but don't follow Councillor Jim Tacordin and take to the streets. We want peace and harmony. He's a racist. He's inviting you to risk your life and being arrested. Thank God, all my family have been anti-racist. My children, my wife, my grandchildren, and I hope my great-grandchildren will be anti-racist as well. It's all in my book, 720 pages, the story of my life. I'm happy to share it or give people links to it for free. No problem.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Jim. And before I move on to Frank, Dr. Jim, if you can, please put the details of your book on the chat so that we can download the information and purchase your book. Just before I go on to Frank, I would say that from Liz is a very, very astute point. It does appear and can appear as if we've gone back to the future. And the example she gave was of the question of churches being places of sanctuary for people who are going to be deported from Britain. And we're still fighting these battles. I think we're all heartened by the example of the Black Lives Matter demonstrations worldwide and in Britain during COVID lockdown. White, Black, Asian, Chinese people came out and realized that there are things that they can do. And so the example and experience of Jim, Dr. Jim, can be passed on to others. I would urge people to join CLS and to join your organizations or join organizations local to you and impart that knowledge to others. Without much saying much more, I don't know if you're ready, Frank, if you're ready to unmute yourself. Okay, so
yep. Yes. Before I start, I'd like to say hello to Jim and yeah. I know you said you finished, but I don't think you can ever finish, you know. And also to Wilf. As trade unionists, we've met a few times. Yeah, but to go to the question, to the point, the topic, that was my youth, my 19 to 24. I grew up in that period. I went through the Mangrove, I went through the Metro 4, I went through, well, there's a Metro 4, but before that, there was an actual, the Shepherd's Bush killing from, which is somebody got killed on the train, coming from Metro to Shepherd's Bush, on which one of my friends was the person actually charged with the murder. he was after about 2 years of backwards and forth, you know, he was actually released because, you know, they found that every time they went back to court, the police story changed, right? And all the way through, there was a blind man who said he heard the affray or the fracas, and he was saying that the voices he was hearing was not the one of the person that was charged. So I went through the whole lot. In fact, I was in there at the Burtons, as we call it, because as you know how the sound systems arranged, you had Sufferer, who was mostly aligned to and played the Palmer stuff, and then Coos, who would play the Trojan stuff. And I had a few friends who were working for Trojan. You know, we had the shop in Shepherd's Bush, we had a shop in Harrow Road, and so on. And I used to be occasionally in the shop in Harrow Road. So when that sound clash came up, we all went there to back up Coos. Now, if you know how the building is situated, there's two doors. Three doors. The first door is the ladies' toilet. The second door was the entrance after you've climbed up about 30 to 40 stairs. And the next door to it was the exit. Now, Coos's system was situated by the exit. So we were standing there listening to the music, and then suddenly this door swung open. 3 police came in. They started to just walk about like, you know, they owned the place. And you know, just started to stop and questioning people and you know, the lights came on, the sound went off, and then fracas started. They bolted for the door. And like I said, the first door was the ladies' toilet, and one of them went straight into the ladies' toilet. The others went to the stairs. Fortunately, he realized his mistake. He turned to come out, but at that time, the crowd was irated. So with the missiles that hit the door, he went back inside and had to wait. Now, we as I said, that I think I was about 19 or 20 at that time, and the stairs where we were just outside the exit stairs, you know, outside the exit door, inside, but at the exit door. And for us, we didn't know about what was, we expected to find that there will be a whole set of police in. In fact, when we opened the exit door and looked across, because there was a pub with a great big forecourt in front of the pub, that whole area was packed with police vehicles. So this was a setup from start to finish. The excuse of chasing a taxi driver was just made up. But this was a planned whatever it was, search or whatever they were going to do. It was planned. Having opened the exit door and seen all that happening, we decided that's the way out. So we went down the exit door, climbed over the fence, jumped over from yard to yard, and got back out into the streets and walked around the whole thing. And being from Shepherd's Bush, we just headed back to Shepherd's Bush. We didn't know anything about the Cricklewood 12 that was going on. But to us, when you're in a historic situation, it is just another day. You don't know how history is going to report that. And, you know, it's just, we know exactly what to do, because at that age, it's just something that comes natural. Like in the Mangrove, we used to go to another thing. Again, there's a musical connection, because as Rastas, or at that time, we were looking for something to believe in. And there was Bob Marley, and there was the Rastafarism, and etc. So we used to go to meetings above the Mangrove. That was when it was on the main, not on the main street, but it was in Portobello Road. Just off Portobello Road. We used to meet upstairs. Then there was I think the Scarman report. And from that report, the UBIO, which was the Rasta organization, was given a house closer to Portobello Road. And that's where we started to meet there. But again, the culture around that, you know, it's part of my growing up, because after going to a few meetings of the Rastas, I decided that's not where I belong. You know, especially when at the time, I think they had the famine going on in Ethiopia. And we made a big collection at that meeting. At the meeting, we went there for the Rastas. And when I said, well, you know, what are we going to do with this money? Which I thought was going to go to towards the Ethiopian famine, but instead, it was actually for enjoyment, for us to go and buy some smokes to smoke and things. So I thought, no, that's not the kind of organization I want to go in. But you know, that's my growing up period. That's the period was actually politicizing me. I didn't realize it at the time, but I was going through that period. And again, it was all linked in the long run to music, because as a nightclub, we used to go to Metro, right? And that's, you know, that was another thing where we all met together. So culture had a lot to do with our upbringing. Yeah, and you know, basically, yeah. But basically, that was it. You know, it shows the links that, you know, through culture and all the things that we want. But like I said, it was just a normal day to us. Mm-hmm. You know, we were actually living it, but to us, it was just another day.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Frank. I would urge everyone, if you're not able to join CLS, at least give your name to us so that we can keep you on the mailing list. I now have pleasure in inviting Giselle Morales, who I understand is the ambassador of the Republic of Nicaragua to the United Kingdom. Ambassador Giselle, are you ready?
Yes, yes. Thank you, Denat, and thank you to the speakers, Frank, Roger, Jim, and also the intervention of Dr. Lees and everyone else that preceded me. I am honored to be here with all of you today, and I think this topic is very relevant. We think, you know, cultural resistance is truly effective against oppression. It's a weapon against oppression. If we are very proud of our culture, we can resist. If we demonstrate and show our culture, others will understand it and resist, and it's an effective method against racism. And Nicaragua, the revolution in Nicaragua is, we actually, when we were fighting against the dictatorship, one of the biggest strong arm that we had was the cultural side, was the involvement of and the participation with their voice, with journalists writing from everywhere, poets, you know, and music. Music was a huge part, and it's important that, you know, sometimes Nicaragua is not seen as a Caribbean country, but if you see my map, the biggest part of Nicaragua is Caribbean. This side is Caribbean. You know, the biggest part of Nicaragua is Caribbean, and we consider ourselves a Caribbean nation, and that's why I am participating every time I can with CLS. I think you are a great voice for the Caribbean struggles here, and also making awareness of the struggles of the friends and brothers and sisters in the Caribbean island. And so I just want to encourage everyone to continue and spread the word about the word of CLS, understanding that today that the only way is to go ahead and defeat racism, defeat inequality, and defeat and gain inclusiveness, a society that is inclusive. It's only if we are united. And I want to commend the youth, the Caribbean youth, because as Dr. Jim and everyone else said, they have demonstrated in the past year that their voice is strong as ever. And they really are doing their best to confront the negation of racism that exists. And we need to defeat it. We need to not to sit comfortable. We have a big job to do. In that sense, I just want to say that today, the cultural resistance is also part of our dignity. Today, Nicaragua celebrates on 4th of, not today, on 4th of May, we celebrate the resistance and dignity, the Day of Dignity, Dignity Days. And it's when our General Sandino, you know, the Sandino figure, a historic figure that defeated the US intervention, he is the day he raised up against intervention. And he was supported by our friends in the Caribbean. The first people who helped him with arms were the people who live in the Caribbean side of the country. So Caribbean has always been involved in the liberty of Nicaragua. And many combatants were there. Some of them are now, you know, in high levels of government and positions. But the most important is to say that at this moment, part of the revolution is to continue the cultural expression. The more strong is that the Caribbean cultural expression, the most importance that we are having, that the Caribbean presence in my country is getting stronger. And that's the only way to make us equal. And the revolution will be advanced as it is and inclusive. So thank you, CLS, for being a voice of inclusiveness, anti-racism, and for the brothers and sisters in the Caribbean. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Ambassador Giselle. Thank you very much. I'd just like to say to everyone and remind people, the Grenada Revolution considered Sandino a hero, and a number of places were named after Sandino. Obviously, after the American invasion, they changed those names. Just to inform you that Jim's book is on the chat. So if you go onto the chat and make a copy of it and keep it for yourself, you can then order it. I think Jim has said that you can order it directly from his email, and he'll send it to you. Details of CLS's numerous campaigns over the years, and I can say to you, numerous campaigns over the years, is also on the chat, and you can find out how we assist our sisters and brothers in the Caribbean and elsewhere. And there's a number of comments, very insightful comments from Sister Liz, our punk doctor, on the chat. So Sister Liz, thank you very much for that. I think, are there any more questions? Because I think we're coming to the end of what we're doing. Oh, Giselle.
Just one thing that I almost forget it, and it's a good news, and it's part of the good struggle on culture, to put culture as a way of resisting and advancing inclusivity. And this, that Bluefields, the capital of the South Caribbean of Nicaragua, has been put as a creative city. So all this year is going to be competing with other cities in the world as a creative city, and that means music, art, and all Caribbean a strong presence in Nicaragua. Thank you.
Okay, Ambassador Giselle, do you have any plane tickets for us to attend? Do you have any plane tickets for all of us to attend the inauguration of Bluefields as a city of culture?
Well, what we can do is perhaps we can talk later and have an event with Caribbean members of the Caribbean in Nicaragua that are going on, and maybe Caribbean youth and you here and part of the world of CSS. So we can organize that. There is no issue in that. Of course, that would be my honor or my pleasure to do that.
Right. That's a poor substitute. We'd prefer to go there. Thank you very much.
Of course, you are all welcome. You are all welcome. We keep you posted.
Sister Liz, you have something to say.
I was going to ask the sister, thank you so much, Your Excellency. Thank you so much for joining us, and to all of the brothers and sisters for their contribution. But sister, we're very close to Cuba Solidarity when we travel as Unite activists. Wondering, do you have something similar in Nicaragua? Because we not only want to visit, but also to share your culture and your arts and your history, but also to contribute to the community, because we see you as a force for positivity and an encouragement for our young people as well. Sister, is there Nicaragua Solidarity similar that we can organize trade union trips with?
Yes, in fact, yes, we do have. We have a Nicaragua Solidarity campaign. Luke and some of the members of CLS have contact with them, but I could serve as a with Luis, with the trade union, and she organized a visit. And it's two parts. One is Nicaragua Solidarity campaign, and then Nicaragua Solidarity Action Group, and they organize. Actually, the NSCAG was organizing a visit to Nicaragua, trying to involve young trade unionists, and it will be great to have someone from CLS, of course.
Okay. Thank you. I mean, before the lockdown, I was about to put the deposit for the Cuba Solidarity May Day trip last year, but I still think it's important that we reach out to each other and to our wider diaspora. Yeah, that they put us together, but we must remember to stay together. Colonialism.
We can work for next May.
Inshallah.
We celebrate. May, the whole May is it's celebration in the Caribbean. So we can perhaps next May we can have a strong delegation from here to there.
Well,
and do some maypole dance.
Well, Luke, I understand that CLS has a couple of quid in the bank account, so we can have some subsidized flights, eh? What do you say?
Actually, also, I forgot now that you mentioned that, I have to thank you, and I don't know, from the bottom of my heart, because you contributed to a fund that, there were two big hurricanes in Nicaragua, and you help us with the rebuilding of some of the destruction that left us, particularly in the education. Hundreds of schools were destroyed. So your money was put to that, and thank you, because your kindness has helped us to rebuild those schools. So I am giving testimony that CLS is not just words, it's also action. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ambassador, I have lots of books I can give to Nicaragua. I used to be a university lecturer, and my wife was a head teacher in a high school. We got tons and tons of books and school education equipment. I'd love to donate to Nicaragua. If you can tell me how, I'll contact the Nicaraguan Solidarity group and see how I can get some of this stuff to you, because the local charity shops refuse to take any more. We've given them so much. They said, Jim and Doreen, don't send it abroad. So we sent some to Zimbabwe. I sent some to Jamaica and some to Bangladesh. But I've still got several libraries of books. Behind me here is a big library, and I've written 12 of those books. I've got lots and lots of spare, and I've always followed the Nicaraguan revolution, And I think you've done a great thing. You stood up to American imperialism and NATO colonialism about regime change. God bless all of you. Solidarity, my sister.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Jim. What I suggest we do is outside of the meeting, we'll send you the contact details. Alternatively, Ambassador, I don't know if you are able to take down Jim's email. It's on the chat, and you can get in contact directly. But we'll discuss this afterwards. Right?
Yes, thank you.
Yes. Sorry. Before we close, because I don't think there's any more questions. We're going to have an announcement from Steve Cushion, but I'd like to say the following. Apologies for Dennis Bovell not being able to attend. Hopefully he might be able to attend in future. There'll be a recording of this meeting on the CLS's website, and you can listen and download it. But I've also got a longer version of the interview for those real hardcore sound system people. And if you contact me by email, I will give you a copy. There is one other announcement I wish to make, which is this. The Maurice Bishop International Airport was one of the crystallized symbols of the Grenada Revolution. It was built with the assistance of the people of Cuba and with the blood and sweat of the Grenadian people. It wasn't built by us getting a huge loan and then getting some contractors in and so on. People from all over the island would come and help on the airport. It was defended by our soldiers who defeated the Americans when they attempted to use it as a landing strip, eventually being forced back and losing many Grenadian lives there. It appears that the current government of Grenada wishes to privatize this airport. This has created a huge uproar in Grenada and in the Grenadian diaspora. And to this end, Grenada Forward Ever, an organization here located in Britain, like CLS, along with CLS, would wish to send a deputation to the Grenada High Commission to spell out our views on what should happen to this airport. Now, obviously, we're not Grenadians, we're not living there, but the Grenadians themselves have spelt out that they do not want this airport to go into private ownership. It is a symbol of Grenada's history. The arrangements for this will be organized over the next few days. And if you stay in touch with us, we will let you know. This is not going to be a demonstration. It's going to be a deputation to meet with the ambassador and to have a few words outside of the High Commission. And with that, I'd like to, sorry, before I pass over to Steve, Roger would like to say something. Roger, over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much. A fantastic meeting, and it was so wonderful to hear people's memories of during that time we were on the streets together, and it was great to know that we are still around and still fighting. The reason I want to come in though, in 2014, I published a book called Chris Braithwaite, and I've noticed there's 3 Braithwaites in the audience, and I wonder if they're relations of Chris, because he was a fantastic class fighter and a wonderful socialist revolutionary, and it's wonderful if his family are actually still here. That'd be really great. I don't know, Braithwaite is such an interesting, actually North England name, but I'm hoping that Annie and Jennifer, etc., and Colleen are relatives.
Okay, can I suggest, Roger, I don't see that you've put the details down on the chat. Could you put the details down on the chat? And people can get in touch with you and possibly get copies. Is that okay?
Yep.
Okay. All right. Steve, are you with us?
Yeah. Just to say, for the next Caribbean Labour Solidarity meeting, which will be on the first Sunday in June, we have a speaker from the Haiti support group, Shadona Kettle, who will be talking about the situation in Haiti. There's been a general strike. the government that has well outstayed its welcome, I think is probably the best way to put it, and so both legally and morally is hanging on. They are trying to work some kind of fiddle with the Supreme Court to either extend the term of office of the president or to replace him with one of his cronies to carry on the same basically corrupt regime. So the next meeting we will be jointly doing it with the Haiti support group, and hopefully we will be able to work out some way that we can extend our solidarity to the workers and people of Haiti in their fight against dictatorship, and a dictatorship that is actually playing on the playbook of the of foreign capital. And that's what and I think we can actually hopefully we can make a contribution to assisting their fight. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Luke?
Yes, I think we were wrapping up, about wrapping up, yes?
Yeah.
Okay, should I do that then? Well, I just have to say, it's got to be one of the best meetings we've had for a very long time in terms of contribution and lengthy contributions and quality contributions from almost everyone. And I think, Denot, I'm especially impressed in the way in which you put together that video and having that interview. And I know you had to put in a lot of work for that. So I wanted to really say a special thanks to the way you put that together. And I'm really impressed with that. And it's something we can look to do in the future, because I'm thinking it's the first time we've used that format. The meeting was full of surprises. I mean, I at first thought that, we would be exhausted with the cultural bits pretty soon, but so much politics came into it. Refreshingly, it really shows how important culture and oppression are linked, and that we are able to make those connections. The amount of race and issues of race and class and gender that came up really just showed how important that was. So many contributions for Marcel up in, I think it's Birmingham, you're up there, coming in and telling us some, from Wilf, from Nadine, people sharing their experiences of how things were in a period when I feel as though it's some part I missed because of me coming to this country, after these events in some ways. So for me, it was a good refresher course and to understand some of the things that were happening for British Black people at the time and the struggles that were happening. Jim was a real surprise. I hadn't heard Jim before. And your book, I think I've got a copy of your book somewhere up there you held up. So I will look and refresh on that. So that was another welcome surprise. Frank, your story of being at the dance as well, and your role in all the events that played out there was really important. And Liz, for me, also sharing in such a personal way how much you were affected by these events, and especially around the work that Roger and Rock for Racism did in terms of raising awareness and galvanizing people and galvanizing support and making change happen. I think it was a very powerful meeting. And then to crown it all off for me in some ways was having Giselle appear on my screen. I didn't even know you were at the meeting. So that was a really pleasant surprise. And be reminded that we did make a contribution. We were so pleased to do that, and we couldn't do more than we did then. And to remind you as well that we have talked about making a link with the carnival, and I know you're interested in doing something at the Notting Hill Carnival, and we will continue those discussions. Nicaragua, the Caribbean, we've been linked a long time. And personally, when you spoke just now about the poets and other people, I was reminded of Carlos Rigby, who was one of your national heroes, poets, I think, an amazing man who I was fortunate to actually stay with me for several months way back then. So culture has always been around us. I know he performed at Snakes, Apples and Snakes, I think it was called at the time in Covent Garden, and that is where I met him, and we became friends. Now, let me just see if there's anything. All right, thanks, Steve, for reminding us that we also having a meeting on Haiti, and about Chad and the president who's trying to overstay his time. And we can take heart from what's just happened recently in Chad with also they was trying to do a coup in Chad, and the people on the streets forced them to cancel the plan of extending the time of the president for another 2 years of that parliament. So we know that with getting on the streets and protesting can make a difference and can make change, and we celebrate it. And we look forward to you joining, all of you joining us again at the next meeting. And I guess, thank you.
1 second, Luke. Omar wishes to say something.
Hi, thanks, Dana. Just wanted to say thank you to everybody for joining us today. Thank you to our esteemed speakers and to the guests. It's been a very, very educational talk today, especially for myself, coming from a slightly younger generation. It's been fascinating to learn more about the fight that kind of prevailed before. And I just wanted to say thank you very much for, putting up the fight for people from my generation and for those, those of us who will form the future generations to learn, because without that fight, we wouldn't be where we are today. So I'd just like to say a heartfelt thank you. I'd also like to offer a huge thank you to Cheryl from Project DROC, who's tuned in from Canada. We got in touch with each other on Twitter, and she's joined us today from Canada, waking up at, was it 9 o'clock this morning to join us. So thank you very much for that. And yeah, just want to say a huge thank you. So thank you.
Okay, thanks for that, Omar. I think that answers, am I being heard?
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Omar. I think that answers one of the questions in some ways for Jim when we said we need to engage with you. And I think, Omar, you've made such a huge contribution since coming to see us, getting us on Twitter and other things that we haven't embraced so far. So just bringing us into the 21st century is fantastic. And we know there's a lot more to be done. Yes, I think we can call it a day there now. Thank you all so much.
Can I just, on behalf of everyone here, I think, thank Roger for his contribution. I think that was it certainly brought back memories for me from those days, and I think I think on behalf of everyone here, thanks very much for your contribution.
Okay, thank you very much, everyone. Okay, bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you to all. Thank you for your solidarity.
Okay.
All of it, Steve.
Hello, Dave. Yeah.
Dave has appeared.
Yeah, David Halsey. He's gone. Oh, no, he's still there.
Okay. All right. If the EC members can hold just a moment.
Yeah, sure, still here.
Yeah, great.
Got Steve, where's Dan at?
They're not just signed off.
Dan's left, yeah. Should we call him back in?
Yes, if you can.
Hold on.
Mm-hmm.